Well, I'm often asked this question, what do I mean by the word mysticism, or what does the tradition mean? You know, mine is maybe too simple. I largely mean experiential knowledge of God. In other words, not just textbook knowledge or seminary phrases you've been taught, but something you really have experienced. And when people speak from true experience of transcendence or the divine or God, it's a very, very different way of speaking. And the easiest word to describe that different way of speaking is it's non-dual. Now, I know most Christians aren't used to that term, but it means you don't see everything in terms of either or. You know, like Jesus himself is not either human or divine, he's both. To understand the mystery of the incarnation, you have to be a non-dual thinker. And that's why mystics can understand things like the incarnation, the Trinity, things that otherwise defy logic. So, but let's just settle for mystical knowledge of God as experiential knowledge of God, where I know something. I might not be able to verbalize it fully. It doesn't mean you need a theology degree. You don't need it at all. Sometimes it gets in the way. It might help you in the articulation of it, but it doesn't mean because you can articulate it, you've had the experience, do you see? And I think that's the weakness that we find in a lot of organized religion, that we who are clergy are trained to say things, and that's good, but it doesn't mean we've always experienced them.
I think the obvious question is, what is mysticism?
Well, of course, there's varied explanations, but basically, we can say it in a few words. Mysticism is the individual's immediate and direct communication and awareness of the absolute, we may term it God, or the cosmos. And that explanation has been varied, however. And you might say, well, isn't that the purpose of religion too, to help the individual to become more directly aware of God or the divine, whatever term he wishes to use? No, true mysticism makes a distinction, and that is that there is no intermediary, that each individual himself can make the direct personal contact. It does not have to be through anyone else. And the basis for that is that all individuals will have in them the same divine essence, the same universal soul force. Therefore, they have as equal contact with the absolute as any so-called designated authority or intermediary.
I think the best way to look at mysticism is to speak of it as the search for a deeper awareness and consciousness of God's presence in your life. And that's the original meaning of the word mystic, which means hidden. God is hidden in everything, hidden in us, hidden in the world. And the mystic is the person who's seeking to find God, the God who's often hidden in a deeper and a more transformative way. So in that sense, mysticism is really an integral part of religion. It's not some kind of very special thing for a few people. I think every Christian, every baptized Christian, are called to find God as deeply as they can in their own lives, and that's what I think mysticism is.
This is just a metaphor for trying to understand that relationship of ourselves to the ultimate. Right. Imagine, if you will, a large board here that has holes in it, thousands of holes, through which light can come. And that is this side of existence that we're in now. On the other side of the board is an infinitely infinite light. And this infinitely infinite light is pure consciousness itself, undifferentiated, unconditioned, totally aware, Satchidananda, nirvana, the infinite reality, the infinitely infinite with an infinite number of attributes, with that deep intention of love. Yeah. It's the Godhead, God. And God and Godhead are just two sides of the same coin, the active and passive, the yin and yang. And then we are those little points of light. But we are not autonomous in ourselves. We are that light. Or as Eckhart would say, that infinite light, you are God, he, she, or it, God, I'm God, but God is not you, he, she, or it, or they. That infinite light, though we are ontologically that, in the deepest part of ourself, that's all you can be. But we do not, at this point, experience the identity of the one who's minding the store, if you will. That infinite light. I think we're going to discover up the road of history that the light we see in this universe is not that light, but a shadow of it, if I may stretch the metaphor, an emanation of it. That light in itself is so transcendent, so beyond, and yet so near to us. That's one thing. In the Christian tradition, and I think also Sufism and the Jewish tradition, and I think in some of the Hindu schools, that crucial stage in the journey to union and communion and intimacy with the divine is a period of extreme desolation, because, as you say, you've glimpsed heaven, you've had that experience of God, and then the divine kind of withdraws it. But why is the divine doing that? Only so our will, our self-will, our self-grasping will dissolve. And then there's no obstacle to union. Again, what Eckhart said, for God to get in, the creature must get out. It's kind of blunt and crude to put it that way, but it gets...
You're out of here.
Right,
yeah.
you're out of here, that type of thing. And so many of the traditions emphasize that, maybe all of them. I mean, in the Sufi tradition, the phonic consciousness, phana, which is annihilation of the self, annihilation of the autonomous, egoic, or false self. So that enlightenment is a total process of awareness, but also letting go of the self. I think that's why Jesus said, if you would find your true self, you must lose yourself. You must lose that self-grasping, egoic consciousness.
He who hateth not his own soul cannot be a follower of mine.
Yeah,
and that would be a very confusing statement
Yeah.
for most Christians.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
As you say, soul, creature,
Right.
out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There can't be any autonomous kind of little program aside from God's. That's really what it means.
And you set aside a little bit you're going to save
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah,
A little of your autonomy. You're like,
yeah.
okay, he won't see this.
He won't see this. He won't see this. Yeah. And I think the best of meditation practice goes to the root of our motivation.
Yeah.
And the roots are found in the unconscious, in seeds of motivation we may not even be aware of.
Yeah.
They're affecting our attitudes, our disposition, our conscious goals, and everything has got to be given over. I think of the poet Eliot, costing precisely everything.
Yeah.
Can't hold anything back. And that statement you made about the deepest part of ourselves is one with God. John of the Cross puts it even stronger. He says at some point, now I know, and many other mystics say this, now I know that in the deepest part of myself, my deepest self is God.
Yeah.
The creature must get out if God is to get in.
Yeah, and you're allowed to...
It's the only, we ask ourselves the question, what is God's will? And we ask it wrong. See, we don't ask that question as Christians. See, we ask that question as pagans. That means to say, we are really asking, when we ask what is God's will, we are asking what is my fate? See, this is the way we habitually ask ourselves the question, what is God's will? In other words, we assume that God's will is something that's predetermined. See, that God has sat up there in heaven in a little secret office. See, and he reached to the filing cabinet, he pulled out the file, and he looks in and says, Alfred. He said, Archangel Michael, come over here. What's the plan for Alfred? And Archangel Michael, and our Lord said, oh. They get together, and here's this secret plan. See. And then Alcuin, who doesn't even exist yet, see, he's born. And he comes into life, and he reaches the age of reason, and then he says, I've got to find out the plan. See? And so this is the way we all do. And we spend our life looking for this secret plan, which we can't possibly find out. We try all sorts of gimmicks for finding out the secret plan, see. So we go to some somebody with a magic answer. And we say, well, now the authorities of the church, they've got a magic answer. They know God's plan. Or if they don't, I mean, he's fitted them into the plan in some such way so that they're oracles, see. And you go to somebody and you ask him, what is God's will for me? And with utmost profundity, he looks at you and says, you are to be a Brigittine. You are to be the first of the Brigittine branch of men. And you're, all right, you're a woman hater and all that sort of thing. You're absolutely allergic to femininity. You never got along with your mother or sisters. And you say, oh, Lord, this must be it, all right, because that's what I hate most in the world. But this is absolutely arbitrary. See, this isn't the way life is supposed to be. God's will, I mean, when it comes to the Ten Commandments, it is determined beforehand. See, there are certain things that are determined beforehand. If thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, and those are the various things like, all right, thou shalt not, and thou shalt, this and that. But when it comes to contingent affairs, where there's a matter of choice, what is God's will? And how do you find out God's will? For, I mean, all right, you do consult somebody, but not as an oracle. How do you determine God's will in matters of vocation? It's the question of freedom. See, God has given us, in the pagan situation, you look for fate. So you get a sheep, and you kill him, and you cut him open, and you look at the entrails, and you get an expert in entrail examination, and he looks at it and says, gives you an ambiguous answer. You put the comma in the wrong place, and then afterwards, if it comes out wrong, you go, and he says, oh, I didn't mean that. That comma shouldn't have been in there. That was your fault. See, a Christian is free. And the will of God in the life of a Christian is the work of the Christian and God working together, both freely. This is the work of two freedoms working together. So that your vocation isn't something that's in a filing cabinet in heaven that is kept secret from you and then sort of whipped out at the last judgment and say, you missed, buddy. You didn't guess right. But what it is, your vocation is, or anything in life, is an invitation on the part of God, which you're not supposed to guess and you're not supposed to figure out. It's something that you work out by free response. And what are the indications of the invitation? See, you have to take them in their existential facts. They're there or they aren't. See, in other words, what happens is you judge by the concrete facts, the realities that you run up against in life. See. And these things are manifestations of what God has planned, of the manifestation of his whole idea, which isn't a plan beforehand so much either. Because we talk as if God had this, God really, from a certain point of view, has no plan, in the sense of a plan beforehand, because there's no before and after with God. He works it out as he goes along, see? Except that it's all one with him. There's no past, present, and future with it, see. And we think in terms of having a plan and working it out, because that's the human way of looking at it. And when a wise human being normally thinks before he acts, and there's nothing wrong with that. See, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to think. See, this question of an inexorable will completely determined beforehand, which we have to meet up to, is the idea not of God's will, but of fate. See, God's will is free, and our will is free. And God is inscrutable insofar as he's free, because nobody knows how you don't even know how your brother's going to act with his freedom. So, of course, you don't know how God's going to act either with his freedom. What do you do about that? Do you have to know beforehand what God is going to do with his freedom? Where do you fit that in? I mean, supposing he suddenly decides to blast you with a thunderbolt or something. If he wants to, why can't? What about it?
Where faith comes in.
Where faith and where love and hope, where the theological virtues come in. And there you put the thing on a completely different plane, see. The theological virtues deal with persons and not with essences, see. When you're dealing with essences, you're dealing with what is fixed beforehand. When you're dealing with persons, you're dealing with what's free. So when it comes to faith, hope, and love, you accept God as one who loves you freely, and you trust his love, see. And you trust that his freedom is going to be the freedom of one who loves. And you trust love. And it's a totally different dimension. And when you don't ask love to guarantee its plans for the next 500 years. See? Love is love. And you let it be love, that's all.
You know, I think we made prayer into very much a left brain, verbal thing. And I do think there's a place for that. But the very fact that the disciples had to ask Jesus for a verbal prayer could give you the clue that that isn't what they had previously been talking about or experienced. So I'm going to say this, that whatever you do in a state of communion, connection, love, use all of them equally, is prayer. Whatever you do outside of a state of union is non-prayer. So that's why, action and contemplation can come together and really be one. When you're acting out of a state of conscious, loving union with what you're doing, with God, with the person who's across from you, I sincerely believe that's the deepest meaning of prayer. So prayer is primarily a stance. It's a way of being in the world that is a connected way, a way of love and communion, instead of a way of judgment, analysis, critique, you see. And once you recognize that, then you can, for example, when the gospel says Jesus prayed for 40 days in the desert, does that mean he said words? I don't think so. But that he walked around putting one foot in front of the other in conscious loving union with God, his Father, with that rock, with this guy, that's prayer. And
Last January I had this experience of what medically they call a stroke. And it was a death of the mind, you see. Suddenly a terrific force hit me and the mind went like that. Everything went. And I was laid out for about a week. People thought I was going to die. And I thought I was going to die, which was very important, you see. And then I slowly began to come back. And as I was coming back, I had the premonition that I was going to die, and I prepared to die. I said the proper prayers and everything, and waited, and nothing happened. And so I got somebody to massage me, and I came back to normal. And then I felt a need to surrender. And it was interesting, surrender to the mother. It came very clearly, surrender to the mother. And I made this act of surrender, and a kind of wave of love overwhelmed me. There was a friend, a nurse, Judy Walters, looking after me, and I called her. I said, I'm being overwhelmed with love. I don't know whether I can survive it. It was such a tremendous power came. I think it was simply opening the unconscious, the feminine simply opened up, you see. But that was a real death, you see, of the mind. And from that time onwards, I've never really been in the dualistic mind. Something is always beyond it, you see. What my experience taught me was that when everything else goes, you discover this love which is in you all the time. It's there, deep down there, and you know nothing about it. But let everything go, and it comes. And I got a tremendous insight into Jesus on the cross from this. It was very interesting. And the words, my God, why have you forsaken me, you see. That was the climax for him. And I think at that moment he'd lost everything. His disciples had fled, his Jews were all against him, his people had rejected him. And now he had to let go of his God. You see, my God, why have you forsaken me? And the moment he let go of God and faced death, darkness, nothingness, he was taken into total love, you see. That is the experience of death. Behind all death is this tremendous power of love. And everybody's got it in them if they could only find it. But the mind is controlling you all the time and won't let it through, you see. But sometimes you have to be hit on the head, you see, to awaken you to it. We are no longer afraid of death or accidents or illnesses or whatever. They're all incidents which love can use to reveal itself. And I think, when people die, they're all afraid of so many things. What you face is unconditional love. That is the judgment, is unconditional love, which is very demanding. It doesn't let you do what you like. You see, love demands love. You're called. And some people perhaps cannot respond. it's possible. But for most people, it's so powerful, you just have to give way and surrender. And that's what we're called to do.
Living God, immortal self, there is a maker for a pot or a table. So there must be a creator for the marvelous world also. That creator is God. God is the wire puller, truth or God standing behind the machine of this world. He is the indweller of your heart. He presides over all actions, karma, jaksha. He is the dispenser of the fruits of action of your actions. Living God by singing His name, repeating His mantra, and surrendering the fruits of your actions unto Him. The Lord abides in every creation, creature. Behold the Lord in all objects, in all manifestations. He is in the breath of the voice, in the voice, in the eyes. He is the life of your life, soul of your soul. Make no distinction between the Hindu and the Mohammedan, the Protestant and the Catholic, the Shaivan and the Vaishnavite. Within you is the hidden God. Within you is the immortal soul. Within you is the inexhaustible spiritual treasure. Within you is the fountain of joy and happiness. Within you is the water of bliss. Look within for the happiness you have sought in vain in the perishable sensual object. Rest peacefully in your own Atma and drink the nectar of immortality. Ensure your life with God. Depend upon Him alone. All other illusionary companies will fail, but this divine company will never fail. You will not pay any premium to this divine company. You will have to love God only. You will have to give Him only your heart. Satyam, truth, is the seed. Brahmacharya, celibacy, is the root. Meditation is the shower. Shanti, peace, is the flower. Moksha, salvation, is the fruit. Therefore, speak truth, practice brahmacharya and meditation. Cultivate Shanti. You will surely attain the final emancipation or freedom from the trammels of birth and death and enjoy eternal bliss, supreme peace, perennial joys of immortality. Surrender everything unto Him. Place your ego at His feet and be at ease. He will take complete charge of you. Let Him mold you in any way He likes. Let Him do exactly as He wills. He will remove all defects and weaknesses. He will play beautifully in this body flute. Hear the marvelous music of the flute of the Lord, the mysterious music of the soul and the God. Peace is a divine attribute. It is a quality of the soul. It cannot remain with greedy persons. It fills the pure heart. It is a sweet companion of sages and yogis. It deserts the lustful. It runs away from the selfish. It is an ornament of a Paramahamsa. As you think, so you become. This is the immutable psychological law. Your thoughts make your life. You can choose your thoughts. You can choose your mode of thinking. You can make your life as you choose. If you entertain evil thoughts, you will lead a miserable life. If you cultivate sublime thoughts, you will attain Godhead. May you all prosper gloriously. May you all lead the divine life singing Hari's name, serving the poor and the sick with Atma Bhav, sharing what you have with others, and melting the mind of the Lord through silent meditation. Om.